do business. When I do business, I can tell. I saw a couple of people in this room, but I know them from different cities. I don't know them from High Point. I haven't done business with them in High Point. I've done business with them in Winston, and I've done business with them in Greensboro. And a lot of that is the progressiveness of the city. So I think it's important to point that out.
Can I just
Which
add
it just
real quick?
transitions into, y'all just segued into it, so it's fine, because the next question was how has High Point changed? So you gave us that, and so keep going.
And with that segment, being on Washington Street, that is very true. With all of that's happening, the other challenges has been with being received and also trying to introduce something new. A lot of people are not familiar with a lot of things that may necessarily have been done here, but I'll just say I'm tired of hearing, we don't do that here. Well, you know what? Let's try it, because how's that been working for you? And if it hasn't been working for you, well, then let's try something new, okay? And let's embrace some freshness and newness. And so it's hard to get a lot of people on Washington Street, especially when you're dealing with natives who don't want to come down here. So I'm okay with that. If I can bring some new customers down the street, they're going to end up meeting a native like we met in Greensboro. And the native will end up coming here. And we'll be sitting side by side doing something new. And that's something that I think that could help if we just try something new.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's poll the audience. Is there anybody here that is a native, what do y'all call, High Pointers? High Pointers? Okay. I didn't know if it was High Pointians. High Pointers. Okay. Okay, let's count. Hold up. Just say your numbers. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. About 15. And we probably have almost 80 or so people in the room. So even percentage-wise, how did you find out about this event this evening? So raise your hand if you found out about it from Facebook. Okay. Raise your hand if you found out about it from the radio station from 102 Jams. Raise your hand if you found out about it from any news outlet. If you saw it in like a newspaper, a magazine, or anything like that. Raise your hand if somebody told you about the event. Okay. Now raise your hand if you found out about it in church. They're not going to church. That's what it is. No, I'm just playing. All right. Two people. Frank, you heard about it. But raise your hand if you found out about it from an organization that's inside of this room. Like, for instance, the African American Initiative, United Way. Okay, so you found out about it from an organization. Okay, so raise your hand if somebody just brought you along and said, this is where you need to be. Because I know somebody got volunteered to come on out here this evening. Okay, we got one in the back. That's your daughter. Okay, we got one. You got volunteered to be here this evening. Okay, so basically, you know, one of the things to take into consideration is how are people actually finding out about things? Because if you're looking for the people that are reading the newspapers and they don't see it in the newspaper, you know, or it's not being put there, that's one issue. Is there anybody that's bilingual? Okay. Would it have made a difference if we put it in another language? Would that have helped reach more people as well?
No.
So if it was in, I'm assuming you probably speak Spanish? No. No, okay. So if it was in Spanish, it wouldn't have made a difference? Okay. But I think that how we're receiving our information and how we actually get it does make a big difference. So if a lot of you are receiving the information on social media and that's the reason that you come, we also have to take into consideration that it's a majority of population that's not necessarily receiving it on social media. So we need to be proactive in the way that we're still marketing to be able to make sure that we can get a diverse population here. And one thing that I can say is out of all the events that we've been doing, especially with Piedmont Business Capital, is we have a whole lot of new people that have never come to any of our events here this evening, which to me does say something. Now, is it the location that made you come out tonight, or was it the topic? So raise your hand if it was the location. Like it was just convenient for you, it was in High Point, and that's what made you come out tonight. Okay? If it was the topic, raise your hand. That's why you came out. Okay. All right. Well, you got to do things that people want to see, and I think that that makes a big difference. So we can't just assume that people want something just because we want to have it. Sometimes we have to make that impact to kind of reach out to people to do things that bring them together also. Okay. So that gives us some input.
And I have a question that may actually help her as well. So if we had more opportunities like this in High Point, raise your hand if you would still come out. And that's where I'm getting. So when the city held its millennial conference in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week at 11 a.m., and I'm looking at, and the only reason I know about it is because I work from home. So I am that millennial that's like, wait a minute, I would go to this. But what I do see is a young white man, a young Asian woman, and a young Pakistani woman. And there's the three of them at City Hall. No one knew about it. Again, no one knew about it because I would go to it. And, you know, I asked, hey, girl, did you know about this? Because we could have went. Those are the type of things that I feel we get skipped over on, as far as there are more than just a few grab bag businesses here that would like the opportunity to learn about how to advance their business, would like the chamber. I have been here, again, all my life, but I can't tell you how much it costs to join High Point Chamber at all. I probably looked once. And I have been doing this since 2011 and on my own 5 years after that. So I've been doing this for 5 years by myself. And my P.O. box is a High Point address on my business cards and on my website. So those are the things that I feel at some point we have to stop talking to a small column of people. I call them silos again. We have to stop having these silo conversations. And I know you say we have to have invitations at times, but I'm to the point where sometimes you're not going to get an invitation. Right. Sometimes you're going to have to pull up your own table and your own chair and sit it in the middle of the room and say, hello, I'm here. Right. What can I do for you? Right. So I think that's where some of us are. Or how can I do this for you somewhere else? Yeah.
You know, you hear the phrase, the more things change, the more they remain the same. I don't know how things used to be in High Point because I'm not a High Pointer. I'm not from here. I grew up in Detroit. I spent 25 years in the Army. I've been all over the world. So when I come here and people tell me about how things used to be in High Point, I cannot relate to a degree, aside from sitting in the living room of some old mother or grandmother telling me the stories about things that used to happen and how it hurt me to watch the Kilby Hotel and First Baptist Church be torn down. I'm not from here, but that hurt me. So one thing that I do when new business people come to town, I invite them to Washington Street. I take them to lunch at Becky's, and then I give them a windshield tour of this side of town. One thing that's really stark, shocking to them is when I ride down Underhill and they see how close it is to High Point University and how Daniel Brooks and High Point University basically buffer each other. So people don't know what's going on this side of town because they've never come over here. I admit, he'll admit, until about 3 years ago, Nito Cobain had never been to Washington Street till I brought him over here. Patrick Chapin, the CEO of the Chamber. That
doesn't mean that they haven't been invited.
Well, right. They haven't been invited. Well, you don't have to be invited to go to Becky's. Yeah. And everybody knows about Becky's and heard about Becky's. And I talk to people, and because of their issues that they had several years ago, there are people who Becky's still open? They think they've closed down. No, they're not closed down. They were open the next day. So we just have to expose people to different things and not accept the status quo as an answer.
Okay, so my next question is, how can we support? Because we're not here to just tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly. We need to make sure that with our organization and what I like to call our power, because we have a lot of power economically that we really don't exercise, and that's why, you know, with the events that we do, we make it a point to always spend with either a black-owned business, a woman-owned business, a minority-owned business specifically. We make it a point to be in places where those people are predominant because that is who we're serving. So what can we do to be able to support you specifically and your efforts and able to, you know, make High Point better Because the thing is, it's not like it's the worst place in the world, but if we can do something to just make it better for you, your business, your constituents, the people that you are serving, what can we do to make it better? So
not just Mount Zion, but go to somebody's church in town. Go to somebody's church and support the faith community in this town. And you'd be surprised at the difference that can happen here. I'm crazy enough to believe what the Bible says. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, turn from their wicked ways, seek my face, then shall I hear from heaven, forgive their sins and heal their land. A lot of things going on in our community is because we are not a people of faith anymore. Chisa asked how many of us heard about this event in church, and then she made the quick pick. Maybe they didn't go to church. I don't know. So just reach out to the faith community.
I think being a man and woman of your word, and what I mean by that is, if you give a referral, now referrals, yes, but if I refer somebody to you, be a man and woman of your word. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you're going to provide customer service, provide customer service. If you're going to show up, show up. If you RSVP, show up. That makes a major difference. We had Dick Gregory here about 3 years ago, and I can't tell you how many people who paid and didn't show up. We had a packed house, but they paid and still didn't show up. And when I called to find out, some of these were VIPs. Oh, I forgot. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't, but it was your money. And so just be a man and woman of your word. Also provide professionalism. Professionalism is so key. I try to do my best. Chisa had to tell me to go home today because I wanted to clean. When you walk in here, I wanted you to feel clean in the air. And why? Because people are coming. Presentation is key. It is so key, and I'm saddened sometimes when I go to a minority business, and I'm not saying black, a minority business, and it's not up to par. There's a restaurant that I frequent, and it's not up to par. The food is outstanding, but I had to stop because it wasn't professionalism. The customer service wasn't right. All of those things matter, and that's what could help if you just be a man and woman of your word. Just show up.
I agree with everything that's been said. I will add that one of my big frustrations is, we all hear that keep it local. Okay? If you're going to do business, keep it local. That's a term that's thrown around very easily and too often by the same people who don't keep it local. Okay, and so I run into that quite a bit where people will say, yeah, okay, meet with so-and-so, they're the decision makers, but they're the first ones that'll get a company from Charlotte or a company from Raleigh or whatever to come in. And I'm not just talking about my business, because in my business, obviously, I interact with a lot of suppliers, a lot of contractors, and they all say the same thing. What does it really mean by keep it local? So it takes an effort. It takes an effort sometimes to sit down. Sometimes the companies out of Raleigh and Charlotte are the big ones, but there's a lot of companies that do the same thing, just right here. As good or maybe better, because proximity really counts. And so that's the thing. It takes an effort to do that. I just don't see enough of that going on.
And I agree with everything that was said, but I will piggyback. I will do this two ways. The first one is, as a reporter, he said keep it local. I don't think you guys know how much power you have in being niche. And by niche, I mean a small business. So as a reporter, I'm more likely to go talk to the local woman who owns the local hat store and has been doing this for 50 years than I am to go to the big chain store down the street that sent out a press release to 200 different media outlets. So you have that power to get the coverage, but you need to use it, and use it